Well, good day, everyone. Welcome back to WTF Walk the Floors. I'm co-host Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality, and joined with me is my other co-host, Michelle Kline. How are you?
Good. How are you, Stephanie?
Very well. Now that we're technical difficulties out.
Technical difficulties, but you know what? We get past them. We get past them and we come out on top. Today is a special day. We have a very interesting topic, which is integrated systems. And for that, we decided to call someone who is in the industry and who has been doing integrated systems for so long and is one of my favorite people in this world. So without further ado, Mark Kline from Cisco Systems. Mark, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you are a subject matter expert. And people should actually listen to this episode today.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for having me, Stephanie and Michelle. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you two and also kind of share some experiences. So a little bit about me. I've been in the integrated resorts industry through various organizations providing technology to help align to their business needs for probably over 7 years now. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to kind of start off at a point where I was involved in developing more of how the guest journey and how they take their time within maybe a 72-hour weekend in Las Vegas or any other resort location to really maximize their experience. So from that moment and into my new role now, I've been fortunate enough to be with Cisco Systems to help deliver more network solutions and technologies that connect everything and really deliver the data that also drives the business outcome for that guest experience, both customer facing as well as employees.
That's wonderful. Cool. So you are either two things. You're either being super modest or you don't want to age yourself, because you've been on the hospitality side of things for many, many years, almost like 20 years. You've done cruise ships, you've been in the cruise industry, you've been in the gaming industry, you've been in the resort industry, you've been on the F&B side. So you most definitely have years and years packed of amazing stories, I'm sure. But there's probably this one story that you have lined up, and we would love to hear from that.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. You know, I guess I never really thought of the things that I've done and accomplished in the other various verticals like the cruise line industry, which is obviously hospitality. I looked at it from a more of a secure kind of environment. So to your point, yes, I've had exposures. I've got great stories in those markets. But the one in particular that I have that's related to integrated resorts in the traditional sense is really around preparation. Now, a lot of us have experienced reopenings, grand openings, new brownfield deployments, or even greenfield properties. And a couple of years ago, I had a fortunate opportunity to participate and really develop a new property, brand new brand within the Valley here in Las Vegas. And you watch the steps that are taking place from how the integrated systems, and what I mean by integrated systems, it's really what's going on the casino floor, how the players are being monetized based on their spend, how they're being engaged, how the employees on the slot floor are taking a look at the serviceability of how the machines are operating. And you would assume that everything should be planned very well in advance, and it should work without any question on the first day.
I like how you said you would assume.
You would assume. And we all know what assuming gets you. So my experience was sitting in the prep meeting with the floor, with all the managers and department heads, and listening to how they're orchestrating, this is what we are going to do in our soft opening. Great. You listen to how the people that are managing the gaming floor versus who's managing F&B versus who's managing a hotel. And the question comes up at that moment in my head, like, wonder if they're talking to each other, because that department is huddled over there. The other department is huddled over there. So again, we assume they're professionals. They know what they're doing. I'm not going to speculate. So you let things kind of move forward in a natural progression. And then all of a sudden that day comes and you sit back and you just watch the fireworks and you watch and you're like, oh my God, their POS system's down.
Oh, no.
Over there, they're still accepting orders. How are those customers going to be able to pay at the end of their meal if their system's down? Is there anyone communicating back to the operation team or the waiters to at least explain it to the guests? Then you go back and you start talking to the kitchen and you realize, their entire ordering process is at a standstill. So they're manually doing everything. Then you go out to the gaming floor and you realize, wow, I really want people to maximize the opportunity to become loyal guests through our loyalty programs. Well, then you look over there and you realize that the loyalty desk isn't really turning those cards around fast enough, and people are leaving because they're tired. They're tired of waiting, so they go elsewhere. So these are some examples of WTF moments in my experience in that particular example, where I sat back and watched kind of like the fluid motion of how the floor is operating. And in your mind, you assume this must be tragic to watch as the GM. And when we had our follow-up the next day, the GM said, it was great. Really?
WTF on that.
Really? Yes, it was great. So at that point, I'm just kind of shaking my head. So you're absolutely right. It was great. It was a success. But being a perfectionist, I think, in our industry and seeing it from different angles and different lenses, we could quickly pick up on what does success look like, and what does mediocrity look like, and what does failure look like. And those are some of the things that I've experienced in that instance that I think both, all of us can actually kind of share stories around.
Absolutely. And even like of what's plan A, what's plan B, what's plan C when one system is going down or one's not communicating to another for whatever reason it would be. But like, okay, here's now our plans. So everyone feels confident of executing those plans.
Absolutely. And I think additionally, to bring in another story, there have been moments in other organizations where, my responsibility is to help plan for what integration and what our tools can provide other vendors as well as other partnerships. And the business outcome that the customer wants to hear is customer satisfaction. We all strive for customer sat. So if you think about your own experience walking into, let's just say, a big name brand, chain hotel, Marriott, Hilton, and you've been a member for 10 or 20 years. And more importantly, you're a business traveler that has been at that property 20 times in the last 4 months. When you walk in, you would probably assume that they have your rewards number and they recognize that you've been to that property in the last month. So what do they naturally do? They welcome you back. Well, certain brands are not as sophisticated. And I've had experiences where I've stayed at a property, I gained at that same property using their loyalty card, and I have a certain tier status. Let's just say I have second to the top tier. So you want to be recognized for what you've given into that organization. And you walk in and you check in at the front desk, and they said, "Oh, welcome. Is this your first time here?"
That's great. I love that.
No, I was just here last week, and I also, spent quite a bit of money in your brand, and I was at a conference here last week, so I had customers. So those are kind of one example that you sit back and think, wow, am I really just another number and just, someone coming in the door, or am I really being recognized? So I think those are some of the examples that I would state in this industry, especially. It's really important to show value and more importantly, the appreciation of your guests, because every guest is sitting there doing exactly that. They're like, WTF? You walk away from that desk, you're like, really? I was not only just here last week, but you just checked me in last week. So you have no reason. Now I get it. Probably see hundreds of people flow in and flow out. But again, you need to make that guest feel that much more important by integrating those databases and information so they can see it and help them kind of remember who's important. Well, all of our guests are important, but we want to make sure that we recognize the ones that are repetitively come in and constantly showing value to their loyalty programs.
At WTF, we absolutely adore clueless employees because we think they're such a huge opportunity, right? But what's most important is not just teaching our team members to make sure that that interaction happens, because again, there are so many competitors and so many options out there that if they choose your house, you want to make sure that they are feeling like they are at home. But also the fact that if we're not providing those team members with the proper tools to make that interaction efficient, then there's a bigger problem. And the fact that leadership is sometimes not in tune with these interactions, or the failure or the missed opportunities, is what is not allowing them to truly, genuinely realize, I need this, right? I need this system. I need this software to support my operation.
I think
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I think you're spot on. And what both of your organizations really do is vital to not just the traditional hospitality market, but across all corporations. And here's why. Being able to identify and select best-in-class solutions is one aspect of the overall journey. It's the adoption implementation phase that's so essential to be successful. So if you think about it, if a CIO and a CFO and a COO sit down and agree to their strategic journey moving forward and entering into an agreement where they procure, let's say, a $5 million database system. And that database system is going to enable them to capture the analytics to be able to push offers out to all their guests, to be able to recognize who they are, to be able to do very sophisticated things like location-based services, where before you even enter the property, we have a teaming agreement with maybe every major airline that at the airport, when you're at a gate that's going to Las Vegas, the wireless access points can identify your IP address, not your personal data, but just your IP address on your phone, and push an offer saying, we are excited to see you in T minus whatever time that it takes to get to Las Vegas. That's a personal touch. But how do you get the employees to be able to do what's automated, but do something that's more customer facing? You can't take away that personal interaction with technology all the time. It just augments it and allows the employees to fully realize their true potential in the way that they engage guests. So you're taking away the stresses of, you don't need to worry about the back end items that we're asking you to do. We are going to ask you by training you to perform these tasks. If we don't do that, the entire program and process fails.
Yeah, and ultimately the experience.
Yes, exactly. The technology is supposed to enhance the experience, not take away from the experience.
Absolutely.
The experience in every resort, we have children, we take our children to Disneyland, we take our children to the beach, to on planes when you travel. If you think about the technologies that are integrated to make all of that work, think about how you used to check in for flights. You had to physically go online before applications were even available. You printed the boarding pass, or let's even go back further than that. You went in and checked in at the counter. They issued you a ticket. You showed up 2-3 hours in advance because that was the only option. Now technology has enabled us to be able to go in and systematically process our own transactions on our own time when we feel it's necessary, show up pretty close to the departure time, and be more efficient with our travels. With children, you want what I always say is I want fast results to alleviate the drama when it comes to vacationing. So when you go to Disneyland, if you think about the fast pass, that's pure genius. You're allowing that child to come back. You don't have to wait in line. Then how do you integrate that by having something that's in your hand, like a mobile device? Well, the application enables you to do so. And more importantly, it's also expanding your experience into other areas like F&B. I remember standing in California Adventures and looking over at the line for the same food that I could order on my phone and pick up at the window. There was nobody waiting there. So naturally, I tried it out. 2 minutes later, I received my notice to pick up my food. Boom. The same people that were in line were still in line. My children were happy. Their children were crying and screaming. So it's a different experience. And you sit there and think, why are they not taking advantage of that? That is technology that has enabled them to have a better experience.
Which leads me to the next topic, which is the importance of not only educating our team members on how to promote the different technologies that are available for our guests in order to enhance that experience, but also to educate our guests, right? How many times you bring this new technology into a guest room, for example. So now let's say remote checkout. You can check out through your television. How are you backing up the investment of bringing remote checkout to your guest room in order for your guests to start using it? And what is that transition looking like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are enablers of our customers' business decisions, and we provide them with a foundational network infrastructure to be able to do those things, which is very boring if you think about it. We provide you with a secure network environment that is always running, that you will never experience, or hopefully, knock on wood, never experience those outages. But it's more of enabling them to do exactly what you just stated, Michelle. It's really to allow your guests to experience a more effective stay by remote check-in, remote checkout, being able to order things through the devices in the room. Think about every device in a room, or all the smart buildings that you're exposed to. Those are IoT devices that require that network. Now, that network has additional safeguards to make sure that someone just doesn't walk in and plugs a device and decides to hack everyone's connected device on there and pull their own personal data.
Listen up, hackers. It's not happening.
So it's essential to be able to educate your team members to be able to promote those kind of events. Think about how housekeeping is being viewed right now. When I check into a hotel for a 2 to 3 night stay, most of the my loyalty brands that I go to ask this simple question: would you like in-room service? Would you like turnover service? Or would you like extra points because we're on a sustainability program? Well, I don't want to feel like a jerk and say, no, I want a housekeeper in there every day, clean sheets, clean towels. I'm not going to do that, obviously. I'm simply going to say, absolutely, let's save the water, let's save the soap, let's save the sweat. Let's go ahead and make sure that I just get those extra points. That is an incentive to me, but it also incentivized that front desk agent to promote that for the organization. Now, when you talk about integration of networks and systems, it also allows us to talk through other aspects of the business that we just haven't even touched on. So obviously, I'm very passionate about this and I could talk for hours, but I know that you probably have one or two other comments, questions, or a remark.
Well, mine is going to be with, we see technology is moving into the hospitality industry slowly but surely, but we're seeing that movement going on. And I think a lot of the leaders look at it as, okay, dollar signs to be able to get systems in place for to enhance the service. It's all about, okay, how much is that going to cost me monthly, or the contract, or any of that. But I think for the leaders, they also need to see that return on investment, because, like how you were talking about that story with you're waiting in line and you're able to order the food right away, you may have now been like, okay, now the kids want ice cream. All right, you know what? I see how easy it is. And now I'm going to be able to now order more food and beverage, because instead of waiting in line, I don't want to put myself through that again, or the children. So I think, a lot of it is with the cost that's associated, but the leaders don't really look into the overall picture of it. They just see the bottom line.
Yes, and going through your list of what are those items that should be included in your ROI analysis, because again, it's not just, now you have the potential for increased revenues, you have the potential to eliminate specific amount of bodies when you're talking about, being behind that desk that is serving the ice cream and the food, right? Or also, like, leads into my story. I had an opportunity to go into a timeshare resort with over 600 units, and all the units were in one building, which made things a lot easier, right? We had a lot of floors and so on. But what was very interesting is that in the pre-opening work that I did for them, I realized that they had purchased a specific system for the front office and a completely different system for housekeeping. And both systems were not talking to each other. And the fact that these systems were not integrating resulted in them having to place 2 full-time, 7 days a week. So now you have the 40 hours plus the 40 hours plus whatever else you need to cover those shifts on their days off, both in day shift and in the afternoon shift, to be a dispatcher. Because now you need someone in the housekeeping office that is going to be receiving the information on the status of those rooms and then transferring that information in a specific way onto the front desk. So imagine the amount of money and resources that is behind that decision of having two systems that can't talk to each other, right? And it's not just the hourly rate for those working hours, it's the benefits, it's workman's compensation, is the risk of having a team member who is going to be, I don't know, on FMLA, on leave of absence, whatever that looks like, and now having to cover it with employees that are on overtime, or the whatever PTO looks like to you, right? There's all these things, and the leadership training and everything that has to do with the decision that was made by someone who probably had a buddy in this company and they wanted to help their buddy and bring the system in. Yeah, it's a great system. Or the fact that the person that is prepping to open this new property or to bring in this new system, they don't know about the intricacies of the operation. And in some cases, these leaders are, I don't want to say selfish, but they are selfish, and they want to keep it in a tight circle, and they're not inviting those at the front desk and at housekeeping in this case to be part of the thinking process, to be part of the strategic planning, in order to make sure that everything runs on wheels once you turn on the lights.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many organizations have a very similar outcome. In real short, I'll just phrase it. You need everyone in the boat. You need a reference architecture of what those business outcomes you're seeking and what solutions will get you there. At the end of the day, if all of us are shopping for an electric vehicle, we're probably looking to have an electrician come into our homes and install a charging outlet within the garage. If you don't plan for that, then what do? You plug it into your wall which charges slowly. It's inefficient. So we're trying to create a way to become more effective and efficient. And in your case, cost optimization is really important to a lot of senior leaders. And if you're going to bring something in, will it do apples to apples to my previous solution? Will it get me even to leap further to my guest experience? Because these devices here are changing the way that we physically operate independently as individuals and organizations, and it creates a behavior. So when you have employees, when you have guests that have expectations of being able to do things on a touch of a dial on their phone, then they expect to have that same level of service no matter where they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So my quick WTF moment when it comes to systems is I love when I'm going and doing an inspection at the front desk, and I go to check in and the guest is like, oh, let me check the PMS. Oh, you're requesting more towels. I'll put that into hot sauce. And I'm like, I obviously with my background, I know what they're talking about, but to the everyday guest, they're like hot sauce or, PMS or opera or any of these like systems are just the system jargon that we communicate to our coworkers, but you cannot be saying that to the guest. The guest is going to look like at you being like, where am I in the Twilight Zone?
Right. No, absolutely. Don't point me in the direction of the buffet. I don't want hot sauce. No, I can see them saying that now. I think it's simply put, keep it simple.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's part of training. You have to empower your employees to be able to have their internal language and their customer facing language, because we have not just customers that aren't familiar with our acronyms, but also we have different generations of customers. If you tell them, oh, just use your app. Well, I have a flip phone, because I'm 70 years old. Or, maybe I don't even have a phone. So you've got to be very careful, and you can't, again, assume that everyone is on the same playing fields and understands what kind of direction you're providing them. It truly revolves around proper training and creating the best methodology for your organization to be able to articulate well enough to your guests.
Yeah,
not only
well
training
said.
for the guests too, but also for the team members. A few years ago, and there's still properties that use paper boards in housekeeping. For anyone who's listening and not familiar with housekeeping, your board is pretty much your assignment sheet for the day. Where are you going to go, right? And what needs to happen in that particular room. And we moved from paper boards in many properties to devices that required a specific software and application for team members to be able to update the status of the rooms in their section. And how many do we have of those team members who have no idea how to use a device, or let alone what to do from point A to point B when it comes to that particular new software that they're bringing in? And I think it's important to mention that in many cases, leadership forgets that the organization or the vendor of that system in many cases has training available, right? And you may get like a little bit of training from the get-go with whatever it is that the product that you're purchasing, but there's also other layers of deeper training that are extremely useful. And how many times we want to, perhaps as leaders, we end up being a penny wise and a dollar fool, because we, instead of like going into bringing that training in, or hiring that other piece, or contracting that other piece of their training, which is an additional service that our vendor is providing, we're not really looking at the positive impact that will bring, right? At the end of the day, you're still amortizing the expense anyway in a specific way. So, sitting and thinking, am I able to leave this training in the hands of my supervisors, who are also going to be going through the learning curve? And now we're talking about not only generations, but in our industry, we're filled with people from various backgrounds who speak various languages, right? So I think it's important to mention and to remind leaders out there that ask your vendor, are there additional trainings that we could benefit from that we can make part of the package, right?
Absolutely. And I think additionally, one element that a lot of leaders do, really enjoy understanding is what is the sentiment with this capability and this technology from peers. So another operating officer from another vertical that doesn't compete directly, or maybe it's another brand that they're willing to share their experience. I think that's equally as important. And what are the pitfalls that you experience? Kind of help me understand using that same mindset of maximizing the value of the training, maximizing the understanding of the business outcomes, but more importantly, are there things that we need to be aware of? Am I asking my employees to do too much, or am I complicating it? Again, going back to that keep it simple, stupid mindset. Sometimes it's as easy as that. We all, I'm a victim of fixing things around the house by doing DIY through YouTube. I think we've all been the victims of that, and I see a lot of people.
No, we haven't. Not everybody. No. We could do a full episode about that.
You're the 1%. So I think that you can take advantage of what's available out there publicly, and also speak with your vendors. Absolutely speak with them, and talk to them about multinational, different languages, being able to cover your training curriculum around the time zones even. Cisco Systems is a global organization, so you can imagine when we do events. I'll use an example as part of a leadership program, and we had leaders from all over the world, from China, from the UK, from EMEA, and we had them all on the Pacific time zone for our calls. Several of them were calling in at 2 a.m. So we had to make adjustments and things around everyone's schedule, but vendors are capable of doing that. You just need to ask.
Wonderful.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on our podcast today and diving in deep with systems. I love it, and keeping it simple.
My pleasure. Well, thank you too. I really appreciate the time. And I think, Lonnie Wolf was a guest on your podcast a couple episodes ago, and he said, everyone has a story. And I think that's what we have to take away from this, is that everyone has a story in the industry. Just need to share it.
Absolutely. And that was the whole purpose of creating this platform, was so that everyone in the industry would have a place where they could come in and share that story, because it is an industry where we work very, very hard on extensive hours. But then when we pause and have the time to remember about these stories, it makes it all worthwhile and fun. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on the show today. And thanks everyone for watching, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.